we deal with Snap and TikTok and Pinterest and Meta on really deep levels.
Yes.
All 4 of those platforms are video first.
100%.
That's how they attract the people that are there. That's how they sell their advertising.
That's how the consumer wants to consume.
And that's how the consumer wants it. So
yes.
Now that you know that, now start working with your agencies, whoever that is,
yes.
is how do you infiltrate that kind of methodology that makes sense to tell stories about your brand and your dealership.
Welcome to the Matador Buscast. Tune in for everything you need to know to stay in the know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Matador Buscast. Yes, I said Buscast. I have done podcasts in planes, trains, automobiles, and yachts. I've yet to do one in a bus, but we are here at Dallas, Texas, NADA 2023 with a good old friend of mine. All right, Kevin O'Rourke. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, Jason, great to see you.
Yeah. It's been a while.
It has been a little while, yeah.
It's been a little while.
Yeah,
Few
I
things
like the
changed
setup. This is unique and usual. I love it.
This, you know what, we always try to find something fun, right? And I was doing a little research and I found out this thing, the largest party bus in the United States called the Big Tex. I mean, only in Texas. Only in Texas would you find something like this. And I couldn't help myself. I had to. I'm like, I gotta know. I want to know. I need to see it. And it's been a lot of fun.
Great.
We did a very crazy karaoke party last night. You know, as dealers, NADA. This is a good time. But so yeah, hey, thanks for taking the time to come jam.
Of course, yeah.
A lot of buzz, crazy in there, right?
I think
so much stuff going on.
There's lots going on. I think the attendance has changed a little bit. New venue, a little more energy. It's a good scene in there.
Yeah. For me, I love it, but it's huge. Yeah. I honestly, I got about halfway through it and I thought I was done and didn't even realize there's like a whole half another section once you get past that Toyota area. Right. And I'm like, holy crap. Yeah. For me, I find a little sensory overload sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and I think
so
you empathize a little bit too with dealers and dealer groups that there's so much choice. There's so much, whether it be software, whether it be services, that there's so much to have to go through that it's kind of inundating sometimes.
But I am super impressed with the dealers that are attending. They have done their research. They have a shopping list of who they want to go talk to. Yep. And they have very key questions. They're not rolling up and go, so what do you do? You know, like that's not it. It's like, no, I'm coming in. This is what I want. This is what I'm looking to achieve. Can you guys assist me? I'm pretty darn impressed actually with the dealer body here.
Right. Yeah, I think there's more sophistication that comes along with it. They've done some research. They're looking for specific solutions now, as opposed to just looking for something that will be the flavor of the week, flavor of the month. They're looking at real strategy, and they're trying to look at something that's going to really help their business move forward.
Yeah, and a fair amount of Canadians.
Yeah, there's
a good group here.
There's quite a few vendors, and I've seen lots of dealers. In fact, ran into the Hyundai Canada crew. They've got a good contingent.
Yeah, I saw Don was here. Yep.
So yeah, it's a good representation.
Yeah, really good, and that, you know what, I love that. Yeah. Right. I moved to Canada. Let's see, I was in Canada. I just moved back to the States, but I was in Canada for 12, almost 13 years, And, when I got to Canada, right, it was 2000, late 2008, early 2009, and I remember consulting with some of the first dealerships and sorry, BDC, what is this thing you call Facebook? I'm like, seriously? Okay, but I find the Canadian dealer is that gap between the U.S. dealer and the Canadian dealer, as far as being proactive or utilization of technology or digital strategies and stuff like that, it's gotten a lot smaller over the years.
It has, and I think there's scale of opportunity that happens there, especially when you start talking about tech stacks and innovation, where when you've got a Canadian dealer that comes to a U.S. enterprise like this, they're larger dealers in the U.S. Of course, the scale is much larger, but it doesn't preclude the fact that some of that tech stack can be used in Canada for smaller scale,
100%.
Smaller dealers. But as you know, there's a lot of dealer groups in Canada now, so we are becoming quite a large enterprise. So a lot of the tech stack that you see at a show like this is becoming super relevant even in Canada.
Yeah, and you're seeing U.S. groups buying Canadian dealer
for
groups
sure.
and
as you start seeing the dollar slip into that kind of low 70s mark, you're going to start seeing that as an attractive
I think for the Canadian market, it's going to be a really, really interesting 2023. It's so funny because I have on the agency, I have Canadian dealers and I have U.S. dealers, and talking to them is just such a different set of concerns and strategies and so on. It's really hard for me to go from talking to one Nissan dealership that has 13 vehicles in stock to another one that has 917 in stock.
Right. Yeah, totally different motivations, totally different methods that they need to do to kind of bring in certain customers as they go through. And I think it's 2023 is going to be almost a bit of a back in time type of scenario that rewind the times back to 2018, 2019, when instead of if you have it, you'll sell it, inventory levels are starting to return. You're starting to get customers that, even though, certainly in Canada, we've got some interest rate fluctuations, that for the first time in many years, dealers are going to have to be pretty active in how they attract those customers, how to bring back that customer base, but also looking at kind of not even necessarily innovative ways, but efficient ways of being able to kind of bring in some of those customers.
I'm with you. I mean, I think some of the things that people are saying about focusing for this year is kind of getting back to the basics. But I do cringe a little though when I hear that, because I'm like, which basics are we talking about? Right. Are we talking about the basics that we were really on track to do in 2019? Or are we talking about the basics from 2008, 2009?
Yeah, and I think it's about value proposition that a dealership's going to have. Just like I had mentioned before, like it's a return where you're now competing for that customer's dollar now. It's not about that dealer happens to have a Ford F-150, so I'm going to deal with them because they have it. Now you're actually going to have to put together those stories of the dealership. What's your value proposition? What makes you special? And we're returning to that side of it. You're right. Returning back to basics from a marketing perspective, I think is cringeworthy from that side, because you do have to kind of keep step with how audiences and how Canadians are actually looking to you.
Yes.
They do a lot of that research on their own, more so than they ever have. But I think it's one of those kind of elements, social media being certainly one of them, of being able to bring them in, tell your story in a different way. And it's no longer just showing a vehicle with 0% for 84. Now it's talking a little bit about what's the dealership experience? What's the brand that the dealer group?
Which I think in 19, we were seeing a lot of that, especially in Canada. We've seen a lot of that was the transition. That was the direction we were heading in. And, for the last 3 years, the story has been written for them. Right? They didn't have to create a story. It was, I have it. Do you want it? This is how much it is. Like the story was predefined for them. And now we're getting into a place now where we're going to have to start telling the story. From an operations perspective, we're going to actually have to have salesmanship. Salesmanship is going to now have to come back. I'd love to get your thoughts on that. We're no longer order takers. Actually, let me get your thoughts on that. We can't be order takers anymore. We got to get back to sales.
I think you're absolutely right. And it comes from things that you just mentioned before that was very inventory driven and kind of demand and supply driven, where now the customer experience side of the equation is going to have to elevate significantly, not just from what a salesperson has to do when someone enters into the dealership themselves, but how do you portray yourself, whether it be in social or some of the other advertising. But that idea of the value of vehicles has plummeted, probably a wrong word, but it's dropped considerably from a buyback perspective, where you could reach out and just say, hey, there's an opportunity here to have you move into a new vehicle. You're now going to have that salespersonship that comes in to be able to help tell that story of why you and not someone else. And it's not just about that vehicle anymore. It's about the person, the dealership, the culture that's being presented.
We have to write the story now, right? And I think if we're going to get back to the basics of marketing, then we have to get back to where I really think the Canadian dealer body was starting to embrace their storytelling abilities, and a lot of those storytelling abilities is they're operationally based, right? You said it earlier, experience, right? Look, experience is never generated by one large thing,
right?
Because if it was, we would all do it and life would be great. And we'd just, every time they come in, they hit the experience button, balloons and everything would come down from the sky and it would be awesome, right? But it's not. It's the little things that make up these experiences. And, I to your point, getting back to the storytelling, what do you think some of the dealers out there that may be listening or watching right now, what is some of those story elements and how do they need to get back to those basics?
Yeah, I think you had mentioned it before. It's just people like to do business with people as opposed to just that product, and you have to kind of show your personality as a dealership. Social does give you that really interesting way of being able to, within an ad unit, tell 1,000 different stories and it be actionable, which is different than you have in any other medium. When you've got a dealership themselves being able to kind of tell the story of that dealership and why you and not someone else, little things like how do you hire people? has a big role to play on how you want to purchase something. If you know that dealership treats their employees really well, or their hiring practices are it has nothing to do with the features, advantages, and benefits of a vehicle, but to a person, to see how someone is personable with how they treat the people within their own organization plays huge roles.
Yes.
In a social side, we always encourage all our clients themselves is that it's not just about the vehicle, but tell the stories about your dealership, whether it's service, sales, your hiring practices, how you do buybacks, how do you do things easy for people to be able to come through, so that the content is really what drives that through. What's changed dramatically in social is, in addition to just the advertising efficiency and effectiveness, is that those stories can be told really well on social, because that's the platform. It's a visual platform in many cases that it allows you to kind of showcase those things. And that's really what the change from a basics of marketing, moving it to like, how are you telling that story in front of the right audience?
Well, let's talk about how to tell that story. Like, okay, so I understand marketing dollars have been put on pause for many Canadian dealers, for some time now, right? Well, and a lot has changed actually in those last couple of years. Just behavioral targeting and targeting parameters that we had when you were investing your dollars don't even exist now these days. What Kevin's saying is that, you really need to become the storyteller of your business, all right? Because, just putting out a $250 biweekly ad, you're not going to be able to target the low hanging audiences that you were able to do before.
It's the exact same story as someone else. If you do 0% for 84 or $250 biweekly, how is that story different than the next dealership?
100%.
And what's different in that kind of equation is that's your story.
That's not the experience, right? See, that's the kicker,
Correct.
right? Look, me and you both have been in the automotive industry for quite some time, and this happens to me whenever I go to a dinner party with a bunch of new people. They find out that I'm in the automotive industry, and they go, "Well, let me tell you about the last car I bought." Like I did something about it. But here's the one thing I've always found super fascinating every single time they kind of like reel up to tell me their story is I have yet to ever meet someone tell me about the $250 biweekly car they bought.
Right. Yeah, it's how
it's definitely not a part of the story.
Right.
It's not a part of the story.
Yeah, and it's a vehicle purchase, as we all know in the auto side, it's really about the life moment and how are you trying to accommodate what's happening in their life at the time.
Yes.
Whether that's kids are growing up, it's kids going off to university, the changes, loss of job, whatever that is, that the vehicle is really this weird reflection point on people's lives at the moment in time that happens. The advantage to something social is that's the nature of what social media is. It's telling a life story in front of your eyes with the ability to share it with others, but brands are now part of that story. Dealerships are now part of that story. So when I say doing kind of storytelling, understand what those life cycles are. There's some great targeting that happens within social that we can certainly help clients with and being able to establish. But it's also being able to identify what do those life moments mean to a vehicle and vice versa. Like what's that need and want on that
100%.
side? And that gets you away from 0% for 84, or even if it's a higher price, because you're now meeting that life expectation.
Well, you're connecting. You're connecting with the customer at the customer's level.
Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about what that looks like, right? If you're going to tell a story, all right, you need to tell the story through video. I'm actually at the point now where I just think it's unacceptable. Like I just literally, guys, I know you might get mad at me, but if you're a Canadian dealer out there right now, all right, you're running an active marketing campaign and video is not a part of that campaign, you're doing it wrong. I don't even have room for margin anymore at this point, right? Where it's just like it's visual, there's tonality, all right? I can connect, I can see, I can hear. And it's a shame. It's a shame that if you're not out there, if you're not doing it, but that's the kind of, I'm not saying you need to do other formats. Video needs to be a part of that storytelling.
Video's got to be right front and foremost. And if you don't have a digital agency that kind of believes in that as well, then you should be questioning that.
I agree.
The way to kind of look at it is look at all the social platforms. I mean, we deal with Snap and TikTok and Pinterest and Meta on really deep levels.
Yes.
All four of those platforms are video first.
100%.
That's how they attract the people that are there. That's how they sell their advertising.
That's how the consumer wants to consume.
And that's how the consumer wants it. So now that you know that, now start working with your agencies, whoever that is how do you infiltrate that kind of methodology that makes sense to tell stories about your brand and your dealership. That's the magic sauce.
And don't complain if you're paying a little bucks to produce it, because I'm tired of that. What do you mean I got to I got to spend some money to make a video. Yes, you do. But the benefit of that, though, is that still, even today, it blows my mind of how low cost per views are on video.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we've been doing video ads since 16, 17, and legitimately the price hasn't fluctuated that much. Here we are in 2023. It's the only ad format that I don't think has actually fluctuated as far as much in the actual cost per view.
Yeah.
Yes, you're going to spend a few bucks making a video, but the dollars you're putting into it is going to be far less than if you're running a different type of ad.
Yeah, and video, certainly within social, and even more so from an auto dealer's perspective, is think of it more as a movie trailer.
There
And
you go. I love it.
You guys are selling the movie on the other
Like,
side.
and think about what a movie trailer does.
What a movie trailer
sells
does.
the sizzle, not the steak.
Right.
There you go.
But
That's a good
it
one.
also is informative. It also tells a little bit of a story about it, but
Yes.
it craves them to kind of move on forward. A static display ad that you might have in a programmatic scenario is only going to tell you what the offer is.
That's it.
It's something you can get in 1,000 other places. But what they can't understand is when you're doing video, it captures the moment in time that sits there,
100%.
their life cycle that they're and the personalities that come through, whether or not it's a salesperson in the dealership, whether it's the GM, whether it's the technician, those are kind of behind the scenes of what makes your dealership different and the culture that you've started to embrace from that side. And
Yes.
how do you display that? You could only do that in video.
No, you can. And look, you got to dig a little deeper when it comes to that video message, right? Look, at the end of the day, we all know that you're a Toyota or a Mazda dealership. You got a 30-foot freaking sign outside your building saying what you are, okay? I'm done. If it even says it right at the top what you are. You're a Mazda dealer. I get it. I don't need to know. I need to know more about you, about the brand. Not just what you do. We get you sell metal, you service metal. Why you do it, the way you do it will connect to me as a customer. But what do you think that looks like? That why? How's that translate out?
Like the why for the story itself, like why have it go forward?
Why me versus the other 17 Nissan stores that are 30-minute drive?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what we had talked about before. Other people like to do business with people they like.
Yeah, it's that experience.
It's an
right?
experience that drives anything that comes there, and it's also showcasing that vehicle in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So social's great because of the fact they're able to kind of do it both visually, whether it's video or otherwise. But some of our most successful campaigns are inventory ads or catalog ads that you might call on different platforms. The images that are kind of cycling through there's one thing where we do kind of direct lead generation that comes off of it, and we can scrape and have inventory as part of that dynamic process.
Mm-hmm.
The images of the vehicles that resonate the best are not stock photography. It's shots from within your own yard, or even in some cases, it could be a vehicle that has just arrived off of the trailer. Like
it's
it
rough.
Creates
it's coming.
something
It's
that's
here,
rough, because that's how, when they enter into your dealership, that's how
It's
they're going to see
authentic.
it. It's authentic, it's transparent, and it starts to build credibility for that dealership. That you're not going to bullshit them on the way through. This isn't think about yourself as a consumer. If you are on certainly for the Canadian audience, if you're on something like a Kijiji Classified and someone is selling something that you're looking for, there's a brand new chair that you want to be able to pick up. If someone puts a stock photography from IKEA on that as an ad, you're less likely to reach out to it than if it was a picture of someone taking a picture of that.
Actually in my house. 100%.
Actual chair. I wanted to see the condition.
That's what it looked like before you open the box and try to put the 1,700 pieces together, and then had 47 pieces still left over.
Right. And there's some divisiveness that where they'd say, well, I don't have the assets, I don't have that. That's long gone now. There's thousands of vendors that can do that. You can
Where's
do
this
it.
thing?
There's a little device that we
have you
call a
seen these
phone.
things?
Yeah, they're
Have you seen
new. I don't
these?
understand.
But
it gives you that
they're pretty amazing. There's this red button on it,
and that's
if I
all
hit
takes.
it, holy
High
crap!
resolution.
I'm making video,
Yeah.
and I'm going to tell a story of how amazing our podcast
Exactly.
is.
And there's a misnomer too that because it's a brand new vehicle,
Yes.
well, the stock photography is going to be fine. It's brand new. It doesn't change, but it makes a big deal.
100%. And look, I think we've been talking a lot for the Canadian dealers out there watching and listening. We've been talking a lot about buying experience. You've heard this now for the last 5 years. You now need to start thinking about marketing experience.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And it's not acceptable anymore to market at the customer. You need to market to the customer, and that's an entirely different mindset, right?
Yep.
That means you need to know your customer before you just go randomly start putting out something out there. Know the customer. Here's what customers appreciate now in a marketing experience. Mm-hmm. They feel like they're known, all right, and that if I need to engage with you, it's easy. right? And that's what everybody wants in a good experience,
It is,
right?
yeah.
They want to be known, and then they also want the most frictionless connection possible, right? So, I don't know about you. Look, I'm getting on my soapbox. This happens. This happens when I talk about marketing. I apologize. I get on my soapbox, okay? All right? But, the fact that we're putting, one singular ad out there, this is not a one size fits all, okay?
Right.
You have the opportunity. We're talking about telling stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell the story to that audience, one, and then two, a form. This is me. I get all right. I'll get on my soapbox in one more second. I'll just finish this, okay? I hate forms. I hate everything about a form. All right. Let me get your first name, last name, email address, phone number, blood type, shoe size, and firstborn, just for the opportunity to take that information, shove it into a CRM, so you can get an automated email telling me how much I appreciate your time, but don't respect your time, and I'll get back to you whenever the hell it's actually convenient for me as a business to get back to you. Right? Consumers today, right now, marketing experience, connection. They want to be connected.
Yeah.
I want to see the story, I want to read the story, and I want to connect. Love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I think there's two things to what you said. There's one that you want to be able to market to someone to be able to know them.
Yes.
There's another element that is super powerful, and that's the benefit of a social media kind of agency or platform coming through, is that it's also talking about your circle of influencers, whether that's friends or family, as it starts to come through, and this idea of loosely defined as lookalike audiences, to make sure that you've got that element that sits there. But you're right. Ultimately, there's an enormous amount of value that dealers need to have on their first party data. Certainly within in a social side of things have changed with Apple's iOS rather, and how those things are aggregated through. But there's some great value in being able to capture the information that you have about those people. You're right. You don't have to have this detailed laundry list of I need to know everything about you. Really, the two pieces of information that are the most powerful in marketing right now is a mobile number and an email address that are valid.
I'd probably even argue on the email address anymore these days.
Each of those
But yes,
allows
a mobile
you
number,
to
yes.
kind of start to open up not just an audience perspective,
Yeah.
but it also starts to coordinate some of the behaviors that are happening in your online life and offline
100%.
as you go through that. You can start to establish a bit of a persona about that person. We are not in a place, certainly in Canada, with privacy restrictions as we go through, to be able to on a one-to-one.
It's crazy
However,
what we can do here, right?
But there's some value in being able to not just scale on kind of behaviors and moments from there, but it gives you that opportunity to be your best foot forward, to be able to showcase a particular vehicle in that life stage that you're going through. So there's some great value in being able to do that. But you're right, forms are not great, but there are elements within that form that are imperative as you start moving forward to build audiences. And that form doesn't have to take the place of taking you off the platform itself.
Yes.
Meta, all four of them, quite frankly, gives you that ability to have a native kind of collection that lives in there. But
That's right.
Don't
I don't
have
need
to
to disconnect this thing.
So-
I can run messenger ads.
Yeah.
I can hit the button. I can have a
Yeah,
conversation.
don't be too concerned about. We want to make sure that ad is driving directly to our VDP page all the way. There's also some element there that user actually wants to stay on platform. They don't want to have to zip off. They're using the platform as a feed of information.
It's the purpose behind us creating a marketing experience, right? And I hate to say it, if you think that the purpose behind you creating a marketing experience is to generate leads, you're wrong, right? The purpose behind a good marketing experience is to generate a conversation. And I think that's what I think.
Agreed.
And I think Canadian. This is one of the, I think the biggest strategies. If you're out there watching, listening around in 2023, and I'll push you to do this. Stop counting leads. Start counting conversations, because conversations we can turn into connections. Connections can turn into appointments. Those turn into cars, car deals, right? Leads is just someone raising their hand with a question. Great, be there to answer it. That doesn't mean that's going to turn into a conversation. Conversations.
Yeah, I mean, the one way to kind of look at it, you're right, leads are important for sure, but you think of a lead is in our side of the business, a lead is a pixel.
Yes.
That gives you a track to let you know that something has happened, some engagement has
Some
happened.
actions taken. That's
Right.
it. On the customer side, which
That
is great.
other side is that engagement of the conversation.
Yes.
Those things are the most valuable. You can have 1,000 leads, but if you have one conversation, that one conversation is probably more important than the 999 others.
Totally agree.
So.
And that's a different mindset. And I think, if you're out there watching, listening right now, I know we're going towards the tail end of our conversation, but I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways of what Kevin just said. All right, is that you got 999 leads, but that one conversation can be worth more than
Yeah, and I
All
think
those-
it's
all
it's
those
it's
leads.
evaluating what those leads are and the quality score that you might want to assess to them.
Of course.
As you go through, if it's something that they have come in through certain places, like in our world, we're dealing with the 4 major socials from there. Each one of those social platforms that come in from a lead holds a different kind of relevance for that dealership as they
sure.
go through. If it's something that's coming through Pinterest as an example, they're a very visual kind of platform. Obviously, you've got video.
I love Pinterest, by the
being
way.
able to
Like
pull that through.
I've fallen in love with Pinterest. No, like Canadian dealers are not doing stuff with Pinterest. Pinterest, yes, is a beautiful place because there's just something so unique that I didn't realize, and I've actually now become a Pinterest user. Is because you go there to shop. You don't go there to be social. You go there to shop. So, man, we could do a whole podcast on Pinterest. I won't go any further.
And I think that's the charm of something that, Dealers United or BuyerBridge brings to the table, is those nuances within each one of the social has a role to
unique.
play.
And they've evolved. Some of them's evolved.
Gone are the days of, that we're only going to do search and we're only going to do Facebook and then we're done. So we've done Facebook, we must be doing social.
Yes.
Social has become much larger and different kind of niche pieces that sits in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say, as you're talking to some of our group, you'll have different elements within those social platforms that will get right down to, as an example, Pinterest works really well in the last 10 days of a month because it's very visual.
Yes.
You might have something that, one of the mistakes that I think dealers make, and just business overall, is that thought of, well, I'm not on Pinterest, so it must not work. So it's this kind of focus group of one. You really have to kind of look at the audience.
I remember
and being
having
able
that
to change
conversation in the early 2000s. Well, I don't use that intranet.
Right.
So my customers don't either.
Yeah, and I think it's just being, and that's the evolution, I think, of marketing and the strategies. And taking it back to when we just had first started, is that it's back to basics in one way, but it's also a recognition of how tech stacks have helped things through and how audiences interact now. Audiences don't just sit on one social media all the way through. They're going on all 4 of them at different times of the day, different times of the month for different reasons as they go through. And as you have that piece of creative and the strategy that we might bring to the table, or your digital agency, that's really what you want to pay attention to, is how do you best captivate unique and unduplicated audiences, and how do you double touch and retarget those that you've already done, that allows you to kind of build this really robust environment for
that marketing experience.
That marketing has.
That
right?
marketing experience. It's not just marketing for the sake of marketing. It's a marketing experience. Hey, look,
Yeah.
Kevin, I know we're towards the tail end of our time today.
Sure.
I know me and you could easily just continue to
could be
riff
off.
for like another hour.
Yeah.
I love talking marketing with you, man.
Good
It's
stuff.
so good to see
Good
you.
stuff.
But hey, before I let you go, though, for
Yeah.
everybody out there watching and listening right now
Yeah.
who would like to maybe connect with you, learn more, or follow along with your journey,
Yeah.
what's the easiest way to do so?
Yeah, I think the best is just to go through the website itself. So there's dealersunited.ca that you can have from the Canadian perspective. You can reach out to me at kevino@dealersunited.com and give you that opportunity to kind of see what we're about from that perspective. There are 2 pillars to our business. We've got Dealers United, which is the full stack social only agency. We only do social. We don't do SEO. We don't do reputation management. We don't do programmatic. We are social and experts at it, and that's how we kind of build ourselves through. If you're a digital agency right now that's looking to expand your offering to your existing clients, we offer what's called BuyerBridge, which is the software as a service that allows you to integrate all 4 of these platforms, one dashboard, and deploy ads on all 4 within seconds. So it gives you that great opportunity to have 2 different pillars of business depending on what you're there, and that's the best way to reach out. We're new into Canada. We've been in the US for 5-6 years. There's over 1,000 dealers on that side. Brand new into Canada. Let's have you on board.
Well, they picked the right Canadian to do it, man.
There we go.
It's so good to
Cheers.
see you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for
thank you.
tuning in to the Matador Podcast with your host, Jason Harris. Be sure to check out the full podcast library at matador.ai to stay in the know. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe.